Hello, hello.
Hello, Sham. How are you?
I'm good.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Because I know
Well,
you've been away.
yep,
What?
yep, I
United
have.
States, Canada, Nigeria. No, Nigeria yet.
No, no, no.
Not
Just
yet. Not
one
yet. Safari is
continent.
coming
Yeah,
later.
one continent, and I think that
One
was.
continent at a time. Welcome back, Sham. We missed
Yeah,
you. The show
thank you,
missed you.
Ashok. Yeah, and Tech decided today, to give me a different kind of welcome into the show. So
Mhm.
sorry, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who had tuned in, there was a little bit of a technical glitch, which we sometimes get surprised with these new upgrades with tech, right? And we don't realize it until our guest is trying to sort something out on their end, and then we find it out. But
Yeah.
there you go. That's life. We figure it out, and we are on air. And we are in. Oh gosh, we are in. I can't even remember what episode we are in for this year. For this
Doesn't
year.
matter.
But
Doesn't matter.
yeah, there we go. Yes,
Yes, and
yes.
we've got our fans who are logged in. And if you're wondering what the show is about, is Leadership in Flow Asia. We are in season 3. We started from 2022. Can you imagine that, Sham? And what is this
Yes.
show about? This show is where we interview leaders, and we have noticed these leaders have a pattern. Number one, they're very quiet in their own ways, but they're deep
Mm,
thinkers, insightful. They spend a lot of time and effort in their personal growth, their leadership growth, and the business growth.
mm.
All right. And I know this gentleman that we are going to be interviewing today, you have been waxing lyrical about him for the longest time, Sham.
Okay.
Tell
All
me
right.
what excites you about this gentleman.
Okay. So, Junian,
Yes.
said yes. I don't know if he knew what he was getting into, but he said yes to being our keynote at the Leadership Learning Festival that we organized in April. That was the second festival that we had. And we had it at this beautiful campus, I would call it the campus, in Maxwell Chambers. And Maxwell Chambers is the Center of Arbitration in Singapore. And Junian heads it. He's chief executive there, right? And the reason we had him as a keynote, other than the fact that Maxwell Chambers was hosting it, was the fact that he has a very entrepreneurial mindset. He thinks in a different way. He doesn't think like a lawyer, or maybe he does think like a lawyer. So he does lawyering in a slightly different way. He's got an interesting background, lawyer by training and profession,
Hmm.
heading the arbitrations center in Maxwell Chambers. He's a novelist. He's got 3 books out. I think
Wow.
the more to come. And he also designs games, simulations, right? That you can play for, not just for play, but for serious play as well. So he's got an interesting way of thinking about being, and I think thinking about leading. So while the festival looked at it from a very specific personal growth perspective, we invited him today so that we can look at how that translates from a to a leadership perspective. So how does he take entrepreneurship for himself and how he thinks, and how does he then transfer it to the team at Maxwell Chambers, and how does that shape how it's run and how it's managed and how it's led? So
Fantastic.
let's bring Junian up and we have that conversation rather than we shock Sindiri and have the conversation by us. Um, there we go. Hi, Junian. Thank you for joining us and persevering through the technical uh, bits that we call a StreamYard. It's lovely to see you again. How are you?
Hi, Shamini. I'm good. No worries, it happens. I think COVID taught us that we really don't know anything about tech at all. So,
Yes. Yeah. As much as we think that we can manage it and control it, right? I think it has a mind of its own somehow or other. I mean, as scary as that thought is, it's also kind of cool in that sense. I think in my introduction and sharing with Ashok, how we met and what we did, and how what we're thinking about for this show. I think I'm going to dive straight into it because there are some very juicy questions that we have for you, and I think you have a lot of insights that can help us unpack it. And so I'm going to throw you the first question, right? And I'm going to start with where we left off from the Leadership Learning Festival, and that's your personal growth, right? How has your journey in developing yourself, right, your personal growth journey, how has that influenced your leadership style? How has it made it more entrepreneurial? How do you think about, not just leading the team, but leading a business, right? How has how has it permeated through those roles? If you could share that with us.
Right, Shamini. Thanks, great question. By the way, I didn't say hi to Ashok online, so I'm just saying hi now.
No worries.
I think this question sort of begs a bit of a definition beforehand so that at least we're on the same page. And by the way, if you know from my previous connection with you guys, I like to define things early on because that's, I think, a very important aspect of being a good leader is to be clear in your communication to ensure that everyone's on the same page. And I think sometimes we gloss over the fact that we use terms that have a certain meaning to us but may mean different things to other people. And that actually sets the stage for a communication breakdown right from the outset. So I think it's useful if there are terms that are not as self-evident as we expect them to be. It might be good to define them at the start. So I would like to just go a little bit into leadership and entrepreneurship, as these two terms, I think they're quite loaded. And depending on your background, you probably have a perception of it that may be different. I would define entrepreneurship as a mindset where you are prepared to build something that doesn't exist before. It's not so much about being told what to do and following a template that's been given to you and making sure you execute correctly, but about building something that may or may not exist beforehand, which means there may be unforeseen problems, there may be uncharted territory, there may be sort of questions that have never been answered by anyone else, but you've got to answer it if you want to move forward. So I'll define entrepreneurship as the mindset of being prepared and willing to tackle that kind of journey. And for leadership, I would also define it as being in a position where people are willing and are sort of motivated to look to you for direction, for guidance, for vision, and that you're able to effectively sort of demonstrate that so that they can follow and be of one mind towards something. So in that respect, my own personal journey has led me through various sort of spaces, both in the personal and in the professional. And I think one of the things that I've learned the most over the years is the fact that you are always learning. That I think has to be the starting point of any good leader, especially in an entrepreneurial situation, to have the recognition that you don't have all the answers. No matter how successful you are in life, no matter what you've already achieved, as long as you step into an adjacent arena, or even if you carry on the path that seems familiar, but the world is changing, times are changing, you need to start with the mindset that I don't have all the answers for the problem that's in front of me, no matter how similar it looks to yesterday's problem. And it may very well be the same problem. The answers may very well be the same, but the mindset cannot be that I immediately dismiss it right out of hand. So when you start with that mindset, it helps a lot because firstly, it spurs you to ask, do I need to find out new information? Do I need to investigate this a bit more so that I can determine whether this is really something I've seen before or is something novel? Secondly, it makes you more willing to listen to advice. It makes you more willing to take the instructions that come from other people who have walked a similar path, or from your colleagues and team members who may have different ideas. The mindset that I don't have all the answers makes you willing to listen. And ultimately, again, you may have the best idea in the room. You may be the one that has come up with the best possible answer to the problem. But there's no harm listening. Sometimes even your idea can be improved because of someone else's suggestion that came out in a conversation. So I think that for me, my journey has given me sort of that insight that the mindset is very important. How we deal with our own way of approaching life and approaching problems will determine whether we are successful or not. And if our idea is, hey, I've already done so much. Look at my track record. Look at my CV. Look at my accolades. There's nothing more that you can tell me. There's nothing more I can learn. Just give me a problem. I'll definitely solve it. If that's our starting point, I'm not sure that that's a great mindset for entrepreneurship. It might be a great mindset for marketing if you're trying to get people to sit up and listen so that you can sell them something. But when you're faced with new problems, I don't think that kind of mindset is as effective as a mindset that says, okay, possibly I have something to learn here. Possibly there's something new we must try here. Possibly someone else in the room has a better idea than me. Let's give it a shot and let's see where we go with this. So I think for me, I would emphasize from the very beginning that that's probably the most important thing I've learned, to have an open mind and to have the humility to accept that you don't know everything.
I know I told Ashok he can go with the second question, but Ashok also told me that I know you will have a follow-up question to what Junian would say. And so he's right, I have to give it to him. I'm going to ask a kind of a naughty question. So what made you this way, Junian? Was it something that you stumbled upon because you were trying to figure something out, or was it a failure somewhere, or was it a success somewhere and you saw something happen and you said, oh, okay, I'm going to replicate that, and it just snowballed? Do you know?
I wish there was a simple answer to that, but the problem is that all of us are complex creatures that are a mix of what we were born with and what we choose to make of what we were born with. So I'm not sure I can pigeonhole that into any particular instance, but I get what you're asking. Is there something out of this that could be useful for people so that they can also sort of learn from this or improve in that respect? And I would say that maybe oddly enough, I think that I was a late bloomer in many respects, whether in school, whether in life. And that is interesting because for some people, they think of it as, oh, everybody's already successful at this age, but you haven't done anything of note. Or everyone's like good in school, but you're like sort of bumming around. What's going on, right? And yes, I think that's an easy narrative to go with. But one advantage of being a late bloomer is that you also get to see the mistakes that everyone around you makes, because they're ahead of you in some respects. They also fall first, and then you're like, okay, there's a hole there. Don't step into it. Or if you do this, this is likely to happen. And I guess that caused me to become a bit more introspective, where I guess my mantra in life slowly developed into I'd rather learn things the easy way than the hard way. And if that means learning from other people's mistakes, then so be it. And that, I guess, became a very effective way of approaching life, where I don't have to go and do the things that other people do and then learn the hard way, experiencing setbacks and problems in a certain way myself. But I sort of look at what people do and I'm like, okay, if I do something similar, that could happen to me. So maybe I should adjust what I do and see what happens. And when it begins to breed a certain amount of success and effectiveness, then it becomes something that you become very comfortable with. The idea that you're always looking around, you're always observing what people do, you're always listening, you're always, just reading by default to find out more and then trying to apply it. So I guess in that way, I would say that because you have, first of all, an inquisitive mind to want to learn. And secondly, like I said, I think it's not so much about any specific incident that caused it, but a general sense that that I look at very, very capable people making very, very obvious mistakes and running into very significant problems in their lives. And I ask myself, could those have been avoided by that individual who otherwise has been very smart and very successful? And what went wrong? And it turns out that there really isn't a good way to avoid these problems in life, because we can't see what happens ahead. I mean, if we could predict the future, we wouldn't have any problems at all. The trouble is we can't. And no matter how smart you are, no matter how good you are, there will be unforeseen things. So that's something which I realized that over time, the people who seem to do better are those who responded better to the unforeseen problems, and not the ones who had a fantastic plan and were great at executing, but when something came that was unexpected, they were thrown off. Their reaction was very negative. They resisted help from people. They were too proud to admit they were wrong. All of these things, over time, you can see where people are doing well and where people aren't, and you decide for yourself which kind of person you want to be, who do you want to follow in that. And so I guess for me, it really came out of observing what happened to other people and deciding for myself what I wanted in life.
Nice. Thank you very much. So what I'm hearing is you're a lawyer, you're a gamer and novelist. And I like the fact that you define everything. And I like the fact that you keep mentioning that you are a keen learner. You observe. And the thing that comes to my mind is you learn with a purpose. Would that be a fair statement?
I would like to say that because that sounds like the right answer. But the truth is that sometimes I just read stuff or watch stuff out of pure curiosity, not with an objective in mind. And I don't even know where I'm going to park that random fact. In fact, sometimes my friends tell me, you're full of these useless facts. And I'm like, yeah, but who knows? Maybe someday they'll be useful. But so I don't think I can take credit for being as intentional in my learning as I would like to be. And I know that that's not a great thing for some people because time is limited. Given your circumstances and responsibilities, you can't afford to be just flippantly watching some video, wondering if there's anything to learn from it. But again, like I said, sometimes that mindset isn't as bad as it sounds because you don't know what you can learn from something. That's the whole point of reading something or watching something for the first time. You may have assumption that you will learn A, but you actually learn B and C, and that may even be more valuable. So that's the first thing. Maybe we shouldn't prejudge the learning process and only go for something that we think has value to us. Secondly, there is also the value in just enjoying learning, because I think there's something therapeutic about it, something relaxing about it, that you can actually learn something and that makes you just in a better frame of mind generally to cope with whatever's going on, rather than I'm only going to study and learn and work, and then whatever time I have left, I'm just going to try to unwind and chill. And that may not be the optimal thing for people to function as. So sometimes if your learning comes in a enjoyable manner, it could serve two purposes at once. You could learn and you can relax at once. So I would say that I do pursue things that I want to find out. And I think we live in an age where there really is no excuse for ignorance. We are literally a search away from information. I mean, leaving aside all your fake news and your echo chambers and stuff like that, and now AI is going to make things even more messy because they're going to digest it for us. But the fact remains that we live in an age where you could find out, if you're determined enough, information. But the trouble is, I think most people don't bother. Most people basically just let information be sent to them instead. And I think that could be one small change that would be effective for people, to say, look, I'm going to make the effort to find out something. If someone sends me something by social media or on my WhatsApp or whatever, and it looks odd, like says, oh, like if you take this, you will die of cancer, so stop taking this. And we know we get this kind of weird messages from our friends, right? To me, there's only two responses that you should rightfully do. You can either ignore it as though you never received this message, or if you want to act on it and there are some consequences to acting on it, especially forwarding it to your friends is an act of consequences, I think you should just go and check it out. Just go Google it, go find out, is there any truth in this, and then spend some time reading it. But no, I think most of the time we take the easy path, which is like we either just, I forward it because my friend sent it to me and my friend wouldn't lie to me. Yeah, but your friend didn't check it out. So it may be an ignorant forwarding that you've also participated in by forwarding it. So
it's a snowball effect. Yeah.
Exactly.
No.
It's just a little.
When I'm hearing you, I constantly hear one word: curiosity, and the love for learning. Is it? I like that. Just going back to your definitions earlier, because you mentioned entrepreneurship and leadership, and I summarized it as your entrepreneurship is about creating something new, right?
Yeah.
And when you talk about leadership, is about getting people to follow you with your guidance, with your belief. That means they need to trust you. Now, how do you now marry both? Because what are the key leadership traits that are essential? Because now you're going to create an entrepreneurial culture, but you need the leadership traits. So what are the key leadership traits to be able to foster that entrepreneurial culture?
Well, so I think one of the things which that it's a very interesting overlap between good entrepreneurs and good leaders is that there is a willingness to take personal risk. That's something which you see that in entrepreneurs. They're willing to go bankrupt and start over again, and if it pays off, it pays off. It doesn't, it's all right. I'll just tear up the script and start again. That willingness to take personal risk is, I think, what sets a lot of good entrepreneurs, apart from the rest. And good leaders, interestingly, people may not pick up on that, have to do exactly the same. Because you can't be the one who says, everybody lay down your lives for your country and I'll be at the back sipping coffee and cheering you on. That's not a good leader. And people don't respect or follow people that, so they may have no choice, especially if you come from a place where if you turn around, there's a person with a gun pointing at you, so you have to go forward. That style of running an organization, I would not call that leadership. I would call that, basically, I don't know, commanding and using power to enforce your will on people. But I won't define that as leadership. The proper definition of leadership is when you're leading. The word itself imputes that you are in front, you are leading, and people are following. And so people follow best someone who, first of all, looks like they know what they're doing. But I think that's very easy to talk about and it's very self-evident. But they also need to show that they are prepared to walk the talk. They must be prepared to show that there's some personal risk, that if I say we're going to do this, I will be the first to do it. And I will be showing you how to do it so that everyone else says, okay, if he thinks that he's prepared to do it, then maybe it's not such a bad thing after all. Let's see where this goes. And if the ship goes down, he's going down with us. So at least he has that conviction. He's not going to just try it out and use us as sacrificial lambs for this particular experiment. He's of that belief that this is the right way forward. Otherwise, he wouldn't get into the boat as well. So I think that's a very important overlap, that to be a good entrepreneur and a good leader, you must be prepared to show that you stand for what you believe in and that you're willing to risk your own stakes.
Okay, I hear that. And I like that, the willingness to take personal risk, because it cuts both ways as a leader and entrepreneur. You make it sound easy, but it's tough. For example, right? If you have the experience, if you have taken the hard knocks, then you know how to cut short, like what you said, learn, make it easy. But what if, or when you get into that territory where you have not explored before, and when you have to lead the people, how do you now get the courage, or what do you do to find the courage to lead yourself into this unknown territory?
Sure. Well, again, when we use very broad terms like unknown territory, it can connote all sorts of things. I would say that the reality is that people who are successful are also not reckless risk takers. So you don't just jump off a cliff and say, hey, follow me, and let's hope there's something that we can land on that's soft. People who take risks, who are good entrepreneurs, they are calculated risks. They understand what they are willing to risk. They're understanding what they are willing to gain out of it. And they've done whatever they can to mitigate, potential things. So they do their homework. They go and find out what has worked before and what could possibly go wrong. And when they do something, they're also mindful that you might have to change your plan as you go along. You don't doggedly say that, hey, we've discussed this, I've thought about it, this is the right plan, and when things start to go wrong, we're going to just stick with it no matter what happens. Sometimes you might want to say, hey, okay, we've got 10 steps to follow and we've only hit the third step and we've run into a very weird problem that none of us anticipated. Maybe let's pause here. Let's go back and regroup and discuss. Should we carry on? Could we just push ahead and see what happens? Or does it require us to drastically change the plan? It goes back to what I said at the start. You might not need so much personal courage if you are willing to stop and regroup and take some time to say, okay, maybe this is really much worse than we anticipated. This is going to lead us into serious problems. We should just halt it entirely and go back and rethink what we're doing. rather than we just jump in there and be brave, but we'll just die together. Or we'll say maybe it just looks bad from my perspective, or it looks bad from your perspective, and it's really just a perception problem. There's no real problem that cannot be overcome. But because of maybe your past failures or some other things, one of us is very, very concerned about it and unwilling to move forward. That may require us again to have a huddle to say, hey, just tell us what's the problem from your perspective. Why are you not willing to move ahead? Why are you afraid? Why are you saying, no, I'm not going to do this? And let's talk. And I think that comes with, again, that willingness to listen. Maybe the person is warning you of something that you didn't see, or maybe the person just needs an encouraging word to say, hey, don't worry, even if it blows up, you're not alone in this. Where as a team, we'll fix the problem together. Sometimes this kind of mindset where you're willing to acknowledge not everyone runs at the same speed as you, not everyone has the same risk appetite as you, can do a lot to make the team feel comfortable to say, okay, I trust you, and you are definitely listening to me. I know that if I hit the panic button, you will stop and listen to me, rather than you just push on and then I drown. So that's, I think, one of the ways you can bring the team with you into the unknown place, by taking it in a more unified and gradual way, so that people can continue to be on board. They're not just on board with you at the start, and then halfway through you look back and everyone's gone. But you take stock of where you are as a team on a regular basis, and you check in with people. How are you feeling about this risk? Are you okay with this?
Sure. I know Sham has got this eyebrows with this, like, okay, I got a question, right? Sham, just hold on a second, I'll pass it to you. So what I'm hearing from you is it is about taking the calculated risk, right?
Yep.
It is about communicating, it's about listening, getting having the pulse on the ground with your team to understand what are their concerns, their fears, and helping them, holding them, and taking step by step, the gradual steps, to walk along with them in the steps towards the final goal, in that sense.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, Sham, to you.
Oh, okay. You're summarizing. You didn't ask a question. You summarized. Okay.
I'm holding it back because for you.
Okay. I just this, because we are on that track, I wanted to arrest the question as soon as we get. So one of the things that people, maybe we tend to think about entrepreneurs, is that they are impatient. They're, because they see something and they see it so clearly in their heads, but others need to have a lot of convincing and thinking, reframing the whole thing into their perspective before they can kind of, jump onto the wagon, right? How do you view that? I mean, how do you manage that? And then I'm assuming there's frustration, and you're going to correct me, I know, whether I'm right or wrong. That, how do you manage that from a self perspective? All right, because you kind of know already, you see it, you can see it laid out. Whereas you're going to have to get all these people on the track with you, and that's going to take time. How then do you manage yourself as an individual, seeing the possibilities and so curious to go ahead, with team together with you, right? And manage, those two things that are kind of like, I think, struggling or in.
Well, I think then it starts with you, first of all, asking yourself, what can you reasonably expect other people who may or may not be like you to do? Because it's one thing to say, I am prepared to run right ahead because I see the goal and I see the risks, and I think that it's a good balance, and I'm prepared to do it. Therefore, everyone else should do the same. That assumption is dangerous, because it first of all starts with the idea that the reward at the end of the road matters to everyone else as much as it matters to you, and that's not necessarily true. The second thing is, the risks that you're prepared to accept personally are not necessarily the kind of risks that everyone else are. So the assumption cannot be that because it makes sense for me, therefore my team or whoever I'm supposed to bring with me will see it in the same way. So that's I think an important starting point. Now, it doesn't mean that therefore you are now sinking to the lowest denominator where this is only what this person's prepared to do, so everyone else gets held back by that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that it starts off with the idea that we don't just run roughshod over everyone else's perspectives. We need to say, look, this is why we're doing it, to communicate clearly your reason for asking something of someone. And the other person is entitled to say, well, that's well and good, but I realize that all the benefits accrue to you. So why should I be as enthused about this when you're going to be the one that gets everything if we succeed? And what's in it for me? So now we come to a slightly different conversation, which is how do you then share the rewards so that people become as committed and motivated to reach the outcome as you? Because you cannot just cheer people on when the end result is you are the one that receives the prize and everyone else just gets a consolation award. It's got to be something where they feel like, hey, I may not get the lion's share of the benefit, but I still get some share of the benefit. So that's the first thing, to be able to share credit, to be able to share rewards, to be able to ensure that people feel like this journey is not just me making someone else successful, but I'm part of it and I can share in the rewards of it. So that I think will help sometimes when people say, and the answer may be, unfortunately, that no, this really doesn't matter to me. I don't see why we should do that and I don't care about that outcome. Then I think in this particular journey, this person may not be the right fit for the group. Because, I mean, why are you whipping them when they don't want to go there? There's no point. It's got to be the sense that this is something which collectively we benefit, whether it's the sense of pride that we have achieved something big, whether it's some remuneration, financial reward at the end of it, whether it's some career success that we're looking for, whatever it is that you are being driven by, you need to make sure that conversation is made with your team so that even if they don't share exactly your reasons for going on this journey, you know theirs. And you can ensure that you find a way to help incorporate these motivations into your overall plan so that no one gets left behind feeling like, hey, I did all the work and I didn't get anything out of this. So I think that's part of the communication, again, that sometimes leaders take for granted, that what's important to them will therefore, by extension, be important to everyone in their team. And then they look back and wonder why no one's following, because the rewards are unevenly shared, or at least the rewards are not even communicated and people don't know why they're doing it.
Yep, that's a nice one. I like the way you you brought it back to motivation and drive, right? The why am I putting skin in the game? If I'm going to get nicked, I'm going to make sure that I'm nicked for a reason, right? And it must mean something for me, all right? Or vice versa. Very nicely put. Thank you, Junian. Over to you, Ashok. The floor is yours. Okay.
No, I hear that about. I like the fact that you mentioned don't assume the risks and rewards are people excited and enthusiastic just like you are, and that's a very wrong assumption to make. And it appears to me that you spend time having many conversations, publicly and privately. Would you say that is also a very important trait to have?
Yes, definitely. I mean,
and what do you try and identify during these conversations, apart from just motivation?
No, I mean, so one of the things is you also try to understand the people that you are, working with, or you're trying to bring on this journey, because then it comes down to another facet of being an effective leader, is to recognize that we are all made differently. We are all cut from different, kinds of cloth. We have our strengths, we have our weaknesses. And if you pigeonhole everybody into just a one-size-fits-all kind of approach, you not only get suboptimal results, but you also get suboptimal motivations, because intrinsically people want, first of all, to feel like they are useful and effective. That is a human trait that you should never dismiss. And if you can help people feel useful and effective, that somehow makes them more energized, that makes them more willing to participate and be involved. And there's no way you can do that if you don't know the people that you are working with. If you don't know that this person, is good at this, loves to do this, and feels satisfied when they do this and the outcome turns out well, you won't assign that particular task to them, and you may end up assigning it to someone else who hates that but doesn't want to tell you that they hate it. And then you have a team that is secretly disgruntled, a team that's secretly doing everything out of a sense of obligation and duty, rather than it's duty and obligation, but it's also something I'm passionate about. I'm glad that I was asked to do this because I really think I can do a great job at it. And when inevitably it produces good results, they also bask in the glory in front of the team that, hey, you did a great job. We trusted you and you didn't fail us. That makes everyone, sort of, first of all, a lot more, cohesive as a team, because they know that people are given a chance to play to their strengths. But secondly, it also reflects well on the leader, because then people feel like you are able to use your team in the right way, that you know who's good at what, and you don't put people in square pegs and round holes and stuff like that. But everybody has a place, everybody's part of a team, and they are cohesive because the leader has made the effort to understand who is good at what, who wants to do what, and how do these fit together. Now, it won't be perfect. You won't always get your perfect scenario like in the movies where you get one person who's a thief and one person who's a tech guy or whatever. Sure. But the attempt to do it already brings you credit in the eyes of the team.
Okay. I have a very interesting question for you, because what I'm constantly seeing again is your curiosity, right? Is helping you to know people deeper, which is a very important attribute. Now, in the market today, we always hear about the 4 generations of people in organizations, right? From your baby boomers right up to your Gen Zs. Now, how do you approach all 4 of them differently? I mean, I suspect you have met them, because they're all at different life stages, at different level of motivation, both extrinsically and intrinsically, and they're all driven differently, right? And how do you create the entrepreneurial mindset for different age groups also? Because maybe the younger people are more entrepreneurial, maybe the older are not, or maybe they are. I'm not too sure. But how do you then do that in your leadership style?
Well, I don't know that I've encountered a generational difference in entrepreneurial ship, because in every generation there are people who are unwilling to take risk and don't want to build anything new and are quite happy with the status quo. I think it really again goes down to the risk and reward and the motivations, which are at the core of how we function as people. The question that you want to ask is, this person from this particular generation would have certain kinds of aspirations and certain goals and certain way of looking at the world that will be different from a person from this other generation. And therefore, the way I communicate with them, the way I structure the roles and the risks and rewards has to take that into account. The younger generations are very, very entitled, very spoiled, because they grew up in a place that's more comfortable than their parents. Look, honestly, our parents said that about us. So I don't think there's anything necessarily unusual about that fact. But the reality is that the world is also changing in ways that are very negative. There's a different level of peer pressure compared to when we didn't have social media. Things move at a much faster pace. Affordability of home and all that has completely changed. So I think that the pressures and the worldview of each generation is a bit different. And if we don't acknowledge those differences in the way we treat the team, we may end up creating a scenario where we do something that works for some people, and for everyone else, they're like, I'm not interested, or what the heck, right? So to me, I think it's not necessarily about trying to look at people from a generation and then trying to do a generational kind of approach, because even within a generation, everyone's different. Everyone has different reasons for wanting to go on this journey. They have different reasons for working in your organization. They have different experiences, good or bad, that they brought with them from their previous projects and stuff. So I'm sorry, but I have to keep harping on that. But there's no running away from trying to get to know as much as you can people individually, and not just make assumptions about them based on their age or the generation they belong to.
Fantastic. So what I'm again hearing is about acknowledging the differences, and celebrating that. So can you share an example of how that leadership growth or your leadership growth contributed to a business success?
So, I mean, for me, one of the things that that I've always had this mindset on is good people are hard to find. And I think that one success for me, or at least a pattern of success for me in my working life, has always been when I find someone that is recruiting for a role that they're not quite the person we're looking for, but they're better in many ways. I would try my best to bring that person into the organization and morph the role around that person. Because I find that good people are prepared to learn and do new things, so that I can do more with a good person, a person who's willing to learn, a person who's a team player, a person who who's willing to try to take the initiative and solve problems rather than waiting for someone else to fix it. Stuff like that is very valuable and very transferable. It doesn't really matter what your project is. You can be doing that for something else, but you can also eventually transit to something else because these general traits are transferable. So I think one of the things that has helped me a lot is that I look for good people rather than look for people who are very specific to a role I have in an organization. And I'm even prepared to accept a subpar level of performance in that specific role, provided it doesn't create serious problems like you break the law or you become insolvent as a company, stuff like that. So certain hard skills are still necessary. You need your finance and etc. etc. But in general, for most other things, we shouldn't be wedded to structure and roles. We should look to build a good team, and within the team, find the best way to achieve the outcome, even if it means adjusting everyone's portfolio by a little bit. And people will appreciate that, because when people find that they are doing something, again, like I said, either that it gives them a chance to play to their strengths, or it's an area where they're interested to learn more and they've always wanted to do this, and now you're giving them a chance, you will see funny things happen. You'll see people study on their own to learn more about the subject. People staying back late because they want to finish something even though they can go home. People who are willing to cross the aisle and help each other because they're just so grateful for the team that they're working in, that they see someone in need, they'll go and help. You get all sorts of things which you cannot legislate for, you cannot create artificially in the team, because you have good people and you have a good culture. And I remember someone taught me something about culture, which I find a very interesting analogy. He says that culture is like water in a fish tank. If your water is dirty and the fish are sick, it doesn't matter how many healthy fish you introduce into the fish tank, they will eventually become sick. You need to change the water in the fish tank. You need to make sure the water is healthy so that the fresh, healthy fish that you put in will remain healthy, and even the sick ones will get better. So sometimes we attribute the problems to the people, but really the problem is with the toxic water in the organization, and there's no one that can change that more than the people at the top. The leaders, the management, they are 100% responsible for the culture of an organization. So if I see a toxic company, I'm not going to blame any of the staff on the ground, even though they're the ones perpetuating it. I will blame the person at the top, because you have the power to do something about it and you have not. So to me, again, these are the things that we have to do, which is to really basically look for good people and create an environment where they will flourish in, and the rest sort of takes care of itself. Or at least the rest of the problems are the smaller ones to fix.
Junian, how do you define good people in your mind?
Well, for me, I would say that there are certain characteristics that jump out. I think the first one, again, is like a person who works well with others. That there is possibly no more important aspect in an organization than that. I think that there are only a few roles in life where you can be a total self-absorbed individual and still be successful. In almost every respect in life, you've got to be a team player to some extent. And I guess the only exceptions I can think of are where you are so unbelievably good at what you do that you warp reality, that everyone around you just has to listen to you because you're that good at what you do. But I suspect for most of us, that's not likely to be the case. And the people that you are working with are not like that either. So the next thing that you got to be is good in a group, because there is nothing worth doing in life that can be done by only one person, honestly speaking. um, anything that you want to build that's worth building requires more than one person. And by definition, therefore, if the two of you can't work together, that thing will not get built. So I actually look for people who are good team players, people who, again, a term which requires definition, but people who, first of all, have an attitude, like I said earlier, that they don't feel like they're the know-it-alls, they're the smartest in the room, that no one else can tell them what to do, and but they're willing to learn, they're willing to listen, even to peers, even to people more junior than them. It's difficult to ascertain that, so that's why sometimes you need the probation period to see how people function. But sometimes you get hits of it in an interview, or just in a conversation. You get a sense of a person's character. Are they very boastful? Are they very arrogant? Are they constantly dominating the conversation? You get some sense of, okay, this person is going to be a little bit difficult to work with. This person can be a bit toxic. People who don't respect other people's opinions, don't respect other people's time. So signs of a poor team player actually can be found in these kind of interactions. That's my first number one important thing. A person needs to work well on a team. Because when a person works well on a team, the person will, by definition, be a person willing to listen. And therefore, I can save you from mistakes because I can tell you and you will learn. Everything else flows out of that, your unwillingness to learn or your willingness to learn. That's the first thing. Second thing is, of course, the person needs to be a little bit self-driven. You cannot be just a great team player, but you're so passive that nothing happens until someone prods you and reminds you and say, hey, have you done this? Have you submitted this? There must be a certain sense of that pride in what they do, that, hey, when I'm asked to do something, I will deliver a little bit better than what they expect of me because I have a standard that I want to live up to as a person. So that's the second thing. I think they must have a certain amount of willingness to do a good job. Or if I could describe it as a spirit of excellence, that if you're going to do it at all, do it well. If not, don't do it. That's my mindset. There are a lot of things which I won't do at all. I've said this is a waste of my time. I'm not even going to bother. But if I'm going to do it at all, I'm going to do it well. I look for those two things in people. And the rest, I think you can train. You can learn. Most of the things we do in life, in a working context, we learn on the job anyway.
That's interesting. So what I'm hearing is that you've married a couple of things, right? One is you're very clear around what are the traits that you look for in a person. And you said you go even to the extent of morphing the job to suit that person if that person has the traits that you're looking for and they have it in a very good level or abundance of it, right? Right. So you've got that one thing, right? And you made that decision, which is kind of entrepreneurial because usually you kind of go by the JD, the job description, and then everybody sticks to it, right? So you're hiring not even for experience or in a way, yes, but not direct experience. You're not naturally hiring for skills. You're hiring for traits. You're looking for that one or two things that for you are those core things. That's one. You've taken that and you've married that with what we call will and skill, right? And you found that very nice Goldilocks spot where if you know what's driving people, then and you identify that, then you can tie the narrative to that drive if the drive helps you or the role or the organization or the business, right? And then you look at the third portion, which is skill, because some skill, as you said, you can train it, you can do it on the job, you can pair people up, you can mentor each other, you can partner up, buddy up, or you need to go for development, you go for development. But what you've identified is that very important. You see, where am I getting with this? A lot of times people tend to think you send people for training, it solves the problem. Right? Yes and no, right? If you send people for training and you know it is a particular skill that they can develop because you've addressed the will portion, the motivator, then we've got a good shot that it's going to work when they come back to the business, right? So it's very interesting how you've looked at it from the first part of the pipeline, which is the hiring part. And then once you've gotten them into the pipeline, it's also looking at what drives them, what motivates them, what are the skills that they have. And then you're saying, okay, let's now let's now work together and let's look
Yeah.
at how we can create a culture that helps everybody. And when we've got all of that, I'm assuming what's going to happen is that the results come out as a
Yeah. So
natural,
I'm a
obvious thing.
pragmatist. So
Yeah.
for me, I'm not downplaying the importance of training. Don't get me wrong. But I'm
No,
saying that
no.
if you have a person who's not motivated to do their job properly, you can send them for training and they'll go through the
Yep.
motions. They will just
Yep.
tick whatever boxes are supposed to be ticked, and then they'll come back and be as bad as they were before they left.
Correct.
But if you have a person who's very much like on board with the outcome, that they want to see it happen as much as you, when you send them for a training, they will be writing down everything and learning because they want to succeed and they want the project to succeed. So to me, it has to come from an internal motivation in some form. It cannot be because my boss sent me for training and I'll get scolded if I
Right.
don't come back with a certain grade, therefore I'll do it. I think it's possible you can get away with some level of competence out of that, but it's suboptimal. And I don't think that in an entrepreneurial environment, you really want to go down that road. It's what's the point? And I also just want to say something about experience, because you may notice I've never actually mentioned that word very much, because I think in an entrepreneurial context, experience is overrated. Because by definition, experience means you have done something before and you've seen it before. But an entrepreneurial mindset is such that you're going to see something new. What are you going to do about that? So I actually find that people who are adaptable, flexible, resourceful are far more useful than people who are experienced. Because people who experience can only go as far as what experience tells them. And if they've never seen it before, they're as useless as the person with no experience. So I like people who demonstrate the willingness to learn, and they're flexible. They try to figure out solutions as they go along. And even if it's an imperfect solution, again, so this is something that's linked to corporate culture that must be set by the leader. The willingness to make mistakes and the willingness to tolerate mistakes must be a part of the culture. Otherwise, people will not want to try things and learn and fail quickly. I mean, to take an example, which comes with all sorts of negative connotations today because of the man in charge, but on a narrow front, SpaceX has a very interesting corporate culture historically to get to where they are today, because they have a fail fast, fail early mindset, which is that, hey, I learn much more when I take a lot of risks, and even if the rocket blows up, what can I learn from this rocket blowing up? In fact, I've literally written down that the rocket is going to blow up because there is 50% of the things we haven't figured out. But that's the only way to test the other 50% is to literally launch it. And when it finally blows up, what information have we gotten? And that's the only way to move quickly in an entrepreneurial environment. Whereas you can say, well, unless I solve every problem, we're not going to hit the launch button. And then you get the rival, which is the other space company that has taken several years to even put someone in space. So I think that's something which I would say experience only goes so far when there are certain defined roles that need to be done. So let's say you have a finance role. Okay, you need an experienced person because they have to comply with the laws of the country and they need to make sure that the books are balanced. You need maybe an experienced person in certain parts of managing the internal running of the organization, like HR, because certain, again, processes and all that person needs to understand, and it takes time to learn them all properly. But in other areas, whether it's your business development, where's your strategy, where's your sales, all of those things, I'm not sure experience is that useful, because the world is changing constantly, the marketplace is changing, and even the people that you are competing with are changing. So all of these things require a person who's prepared to take a scan and say, oh, wow, okay, our competitors today are like nothing we've seen 5 years ago, and we need to adjust our strategy and so on. So that's why you don't see me banging on so much about experience, because I don't think in an entrepreneurial setting it's that useful, actually.
Yeah, I can see where you're going with that, because that's an interesting thing, right? Experience is something that's based on what you've done in the past. It may not necessarily mean that it's going to work in the future. And given, well, obviously certain constructs. Ashok is already kind of so my eyebrow. Ashok means his hands are like that, which means it's ready to
No,
go.
I like this, and I'm going to make that statement again. And I'm going to keep repeating it. Of course, I'll attribute it to you. Experience is overrated, right? Thank you for that. So A quick
No, no,
question.
no, 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 no. Hang on. Disclaimer: it's overrated in an entrepreneurial environment.
Entrepreneurial, yeah.
Okay, in entrepreneurial mindset. Okay, not in the finance side.
There are places where you want experience. Like my doctor
Yeah,
freaking better have experience, you know.
yeah,
Of
correct.
course, of course.
Yeah. Unless the doctor is Frankenstein, and then he's doing some weird experiment, but that's a different discussion altogether.
Okay.
Yep.
In that sense, how do you measure the impact of leadership development on the overall business performance?
Well, that's an interesting question. Um, I have to say that it's harder than it sounds, because people would typically look at the company success and whatever metrics typically come out of that, like financial performance and all that. But I don't know whether that's a fair indicator. Some companies get lucky. Some companies happen to operate in a in a blue ocean environment where no one else is doing what they're doing, so they just happen to fumble their way forward and get success. And there are some companies which are in a highly competitive, really contested environment, and they still somehow manage to do well, and that's something which has to be applauded, even though the metrics don't seem to suggest that. Um, I think that maybe one way to look at it would be to look at the difference between when you did not have certain leadership attributes or certain processes. How did the company do, and what is the sense on the ground from the team? Do they feel like progress is being made? Do they feel like they are going somewhere? And then comparing it to when the leadership change has occurred, and whether there is a difference there. Because I think that measuring a company against its own success when there's a leadership change is probably more useful than comparing it against external factors that can be masked by, again, environment, opportunity. When there's a crash in the market, some companies will invariably do well, and some companies will do badly. If I told you in 2019 that you should invest heavily in companies that make face masks, you'll be like, you're mad. Why are we wasting my time? But we know that the next 3 years, there's nothing flying off the shelves except face masks, right? So again, sometimes it's just a product of circumstance. It's not easy to measure good leadership or bad leadership. You just happen to be born lucky. You happen to be stepping into a thing. So I'm sorry, I can't give you a useful answer for that, other than to say, you got to see the performance delta, the difference between what was done previously and what is done now, and how has it made a difference. And again, like I said, don't run away from talking to the team. Sometimes the results may not be immediately evident because it takes time, but the ground feels it. The people working there feel it. They say, hey, I feel that this is a place where it's a lot more exciting to work here. I feel like there's a lot more respect that people are giving each other. I feel like projects are being rolled out that will only bear fruit in a while. But if I had to choose where to work, this is one of the place that I would choose. Versus, well, the minute a nicer offer comes along, I'm out the door. These are some ways you can measure, I think, quite apart from the usual external numbers of a company.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sure.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it, because the measure of people staying and contributing well, I think it's something that we don't talk about, and we certainly don't measure it, right? It is measured from the metrics from outside looking in terms of numbers, whatever kind of numbers that is, finance numbers, HR numbers, whatever it is, right? And that's a useful reminder for us. I'm going to pull us into the last 1 minute round. I have told people who are watching that we're going a little bit over because we started a little bit later. So I'm going to give you the space, Julian, to tell us how or what it is that you do to inspire, to motivate, to get people excited in your team, that they embrace this thing that we call entrepreneurial thinking or mindset, right? The way you are, the way you think about it, how you experience the world. How do you do it? How do you get them on board on the same wagon with you?
So one of the things I may not have touched on, I kind of broadly talked about, was the culture. when you say that an entrepreneur must be prepared to take risks, and you want your team to be entrepreneurial, it means that you've got to have a tolerance for risk taking within your organization, in the sense that your people must be encouraged to occasionally try something that may not go well. And when it doesn't go well, you do not chew them out for that. It's kind of counterproductive if I'm telling people that we are an entrepreneurial organization, but if you step out of line, if you don't know exactly the plan and it screws up, you're in trouble. That's the antithesis of entrepreneurial mindsets. So that's the hardest part as a leader, to be willing to tolerate a certain level of your team making mistakes, provided certain things are in place. So my expectations of the team remain. I want you to know your job well. If you need time to get to know your job well, I will give you time, but I will not accept you not getting better at your job. So that's the first demand I have. Secondly, I want you to understand the objectives of the organization, and if you are not on board with it, I want you to speak out. I want you to find either a private or public setting where you can talk to me about it, and let me try and see how we can align better. What's the reason why you're not on board with our broader objectives? And after all of that, if I'm sure that you are motivated with the goals and that you are good at what you do, I'm prepared to say that once in a while, the decisions you make may not end up well. Occasionally, there will be something that blows up and it was totally out of your control, even though what you did led to it, but there was no way to foresee it. I'm prepared to say, okay, let's fix the problem. No blame is attached to this. Let's work together and see how we can do it. If you can create an environment like that, people tend to then become more entrepreneurial because they know that the management above them have given them a little bit more slack in the rope, so that when they screw up, hey, it's okay. I haven't used up all my goodwill. If you constantly screw up, now that could be a cause of concern. But if you've done 10 things right and you've gotten 2 things wrong, it's fine. Your track record more than makes up for it. We're happy to back you on the next decision that you make, because overall you have proven yourself more correct than wrong. So that's something which I think it's a very important thing that you have to check yourself as a leader, to say, hold on, before you go in there and try to do a post-mortem and figure out where the blame lies. Recognize that once in a while, people will make a wrong call, and it's okay. It's not fatal to the organization if they are generally competent at their work and they're generally careful. Whatever mistakes they make can usually be fixed. So when that assurance percolates down, people feel, hey, this is a place where I can do things, I can try new ideas. The whole team begins to move forward. It comes from a tolerance for risk that starts right at the top, all the way through the organization.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is a game plan for you if you're thinking on, building a more entrepreneurial risk-taking environment and culture in your organization. Thank you, Junian, for saying yes again to me and coming on to the show and giving us this 1 hour of your time. Are there any last things that you'd like to share with us before we move you backstage and close the show for this week?
I think that a certain amount of working on yourself as a leader is important. I think that personal warmth and charisma can be trained, and it matters, because people follow people ultimately. They don't follow roles. They don't follow a notional title. They follow an individual who occupies that place. So I've seen people who are such inspirational leaders that other people who used to work for them would call them up and say, I'm thinking of leaving my job. Do you have any vacancies at your organization? I don't care what the job is. I just want to work for you. That, to me, is the highest accolade a leader can get, that people don't even care what they're doing as long as you are their boss. So to me, it can be done if you're willing to put effort into it. That's how I will end this.
Okay. Thank you very much once again, Junian. Ashok, any last?
No, thank you. Thank you very much for all of that wisdom and insights. Thank you very much. I wrote it down here. People are inspired by people and not by titles. I just summarize it my own way.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Picking up all the quotes that you have. Thank you again, Junian. I'm going to move you to the backstage and close the show. Thanks so much. Okay. Whoa. Okay. So you've got a treasure trove of quotes, right?
Oh, yeah. And now I know why you are waxing lyrical about him.
Okay, so okay. Your takeaway, Ashok. Your number one thing that stood in your head.
There's a lot of things. Number one is
Mm,
whether entrepreneur or leader, your willingness to take calculated risks. And like what
mm,
Junian has showed us, it is a willingness to learn and keep learning and hire people who want to learn, who are willing to make mistakes, tolerate those mistakes, build a team who of problem solvers. Fantastic. Fantastic.
great, 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 great. For me, I think I'm going to chuck out the word entrepreneur. I think what I have learned today essentially is not learned, but what Junian has shared with us today is essentially what a leader needs to be.
Yeah.
You know, and whether that leader, you want to label the leader, whatever it is that you want to creative leader, entrepreneurial leader, it's a leader's role to be embodying the things that we talked about today. So I'm so really happy that we got a chance to say to have this chat with Junian. And for those of us, those of you who joined us today, I hope you had fun as well. Please put your questions in LinkedIn if you still have them. You know what we will do. We will do a post up on clips on this particular topic as usual, and we'll be ready for the next topic for next week. So just keep an eye out. You know when we will post it, sometime early next week, and you'll know what's coming up next. Anything? Any other last words, Ashok, before we say goodbye?
Okay. Have a great week ahead. The rest of the week.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.